Hello and welcome to this slightly injured episode of LC3 LC4. Had a bit of an altercation with Fred the Ram earlier in the week, which is probably going to change the outcome of some of the jobs we do here on the show. Old Fred didn't like me being in his paddock and decided to sneak up behind me and literally did me a mischief. So I ended up flat on my back on the ground using my foot to try and push him away, and in the resulting scuffle ended up breaking a toe, and that came about because I wasn't wearing the correct footwear. So kids, wear your boots in the paddock. I've been doing a bit of work back on our air cleaner for Holly. So this is the one that we've been repairing. We've got our new cork gasket in there that you can see. We've fixed up our pinholes. So that is just about ready for paint. I've put some rust converter on there as well. It has been in the electrolysis bath, but coming at it from all sides. The body of our air cleaner cleaned up absolutely beautifully. It's still even shiny inside there once we got rid of the rust. Again, I've just given that a little touch up with the rust converter. That's ready for paint. We've got our bottom section here all nice and clean. Now the one part that we weren't able to recover, my guess is that this air cleaner probably sat in a container or a bucket or something that's filled up with water. So if we zoom in here, you can see that she is pretty rusty. Now, personally, I don't think this is beyond recovering. It certainly needs a little bit of work, and the reason I say that is because I've actually been rebuilding these air cleaners. So I have come across this problem before, and I have basically pulled them apart and fixed them up, and which is why I've actually got a spare here to go into Holly's air cleaner. So this is one I rebuilt a couple of years ago. It wasn't probably quite as bad as the one we had for Holly, but it's certainly the wire inside here. It had been wet and had all rusted out. So I pulled this apart and put some new wire in, wire mesh, wound that all around, and she's good to go. So that will end up in there, and which will end up on Holly in the distance. It's been a few days now since we painted the air cleaner, but I am really happy with the result. It has come up a treat. When you compare it to what we started with, this is going to work really well for Holly, and I won't have to worry about any bugs or dirt or dust or wasps or goodness knows what else going down into that carby now. Okay folks, well there we have it, from rust to thrust I guess. So she's ready to go back onto the top of Holly's carby now. We'll go and get that fitted up. Well, I've got my rear engine cowling here from inside the cab. I've had the two pieces of this part soaking, or the threads on the four screws that hold the pieces together, soaking for the last week. They were frozen. I've got them free now. A little bit of heat, some penetrine, and yeah, just working the screws backwards and forwards, and we got them all out in one piece. I was being careful because I wanted to salvage this felt gasket. We can wash that in a bucket of soapy water and that'll clean up fine, dry out, and we should be able to reuse it. One thing that did amaze me but was the fact, given the amount of water that this truck has seen, the fact that I've taken that felt gasket off and there's still a section there of bright shiny steel. You know, obviously from factory they must have assembled these two pieces and then painted the part as one part. You can see where the other surfaces, probably that felt's absorbed a bit of that water, but I just think that's amazing. You know, 70 years on and there's still shiny parts on this truck. Just incredible. Now, Holly's footsteps on both sides there, running boards I suppose you'd call them, they're pretty knocked around. I don't actually want to be the one that knocks them around anymore, so I'm going to be taking those off, and I actually have an LC3 project that I want to use them on. They may look pretty beat up there, but believe it or not, they're certainly repairable. We'll give that a crack in another episode, I reckon. But what I am going to do, because we want to use Holly around the farm, I'll probably end up making a set of heavy duty ones, and we might tackle that job today and get all the ironwork underneath there straightened up so that everything fits properly again, and then we can also secure our guards as well. So yeah, we might knock up a couple of new treads for her, and something that will survive the rigours of farm life. I've been hunting around for about an hour looking for this steel mesh, and then suddenly remembered I've got it behind the lathe. So I'll pull that out. I reckon there's probably just enough there to make up a couple of treads for Holly. So yeah, that's a bit of a score. Well, there you have it. We've dug it out. It's just a bit of leftover offcut there. But hey, that is pretty much perfect. I think we can definitely repurpose that. I've pulled our piece of steel mesh out. I've just been doing some measuring and just working out the best way to cut this to get two step treads. Obviously, I'm only going to get one shot at this. So yeah, I think I've got it sussed out, and yeah, I'll just have to set to with the grinder now, and yeah, separate this into our two new treads. Rightio, you younger guys and girls, quick tip for you: if you're going to be working with grinders, chainsaws, anything that's going to make a bit of loud noise, whack a couple of these in your ears. Seriously, cheap as chips, great investment, and yeah, save you a lot of grief when you get a bit older, let me tell you. Well, we've got our steelwork all cut out now for our steps. I'm just going to tack the first one together and make sure I'm happy with it. Keeping in mind again that we're doing these steps out of scrap steel, so although I might have purchased some of the steel for other projects, rather than throw the offcuts away, I've just kept them in the back of the shed, and yeah, always handy for this sort of stuff for sure. I guess the only thing we've got to remember here is these need to be opposites of one another. So obviously we've got a left side and a right side, and they're kind of a mirror image of one another, so we'll just keep that in mind when we're tacking everything together. We've got our basic frame outlined there now and tacked together. So like any of these sort of jobs, we'll just keep checking it as we go along and make sure that we don't make any mistakes. Check once, weld twice. Other way around. Check twice, weld once. What are you doing? Hey? You checking for mice? It's her favourite spot in the mornings when the sun's out. She comes and plops herself down on the concrete, but not before she's checked the shop out, of course. You smart cookies out there have probably already worked out that I'm using a heavier wire than I probably normally would on this sort of a job. So I've got 1.2 mil in the MIG at the moment. I'd normally use 0.8 for this job. The only reason I'm running 1.2 at the moment is I've got some slasher repairs to do later in the week when the toe comes good. So yeah, my fault. Too lazy to change it back out again. So 1.2 mil it is. Okay, well, thanks to the magic of time-lapse and television, we've now got 2 finished step treads ready to go on to paint, I think. A lot of little sneaky welds on these, so I wanted to make them just nice and strong. So I've hidden a lot of welds in places on these where you won't actually see them or notice them once it's all painted up. These treads, of course, are built to the same dimensions as the factory tread. Yeah, everything should hopefully line up. Well, thanks to some largely sloppy camera work on my part, I managed not to capture that bit. A lot of those bolts and the nuts on the bolts were really badly rusted on, so rather than put heat under there and muck around that way, the bolts were actually rusted through on the shanks, so I've opted just to cut them off. We're going to replace them, so I had no hesitation in doing that. We'll take these stair treads off now and put them in a safe place until we're ready to clean them up. These poor old underslung bits have had more hits than Elvis. We can see a pretty dodgy repair there. I think one of these I can salvage without too much trouble, probably this one. A bit of straightening required, but he'll come good. These bits we definitely need. We'll put those back on. I hate the fact that someone's welded all this up. Really annoys me when people do that. Don't weld to your chassis, guys. Bolt it, rivet it, but don't weld it, hey, unless it's meant to be welded on. A quick tip when you're trying to cut nuts off that are rusted on at funny angles in awkward places. A lot of the time you'll see me come in on the horizontal and just cut straight through, sort of underneath the nut, but between the washer if there's a washer fitted. In some cases it's just not practical because in this case it might be on a curve, it might be a damaged part that you're trying to get out. So you've got the other option of actually coming down on the vertical and just slicing straight through the top of the bolt and the nut, if that's possible. Not always possible. But what that allows you to do then is just get a cold chisel and just basically split that nut. Well, I've stripped all the nuts and bolts and bits and pieces, bibs and bobs off these underslung running board brackets. Managed to find myself a little exhaust bracket there as well too in my box of tricks. This one here is not the original bracket that we started with. I've been to the down to the boneyard and found one that is, yeah, a little bit better than the one that was on there. The one that was on there that I don't think I can repair today, I'm not going to throw it away, I'll hang on to it. It'll be one of those rainy day repairs. One of the things that really amazes me with the little brackets that help hold these in place, I've never struck two of these brackets that were absolutely identical. So many of the parts on the truck are just mass produced by machine. I've always wondered with these little brackets if they were done by hand. I mean, I've just spent the last half hour straightening these all out and getting them back to plumb. But, you know, the thing that makes you wonder with these is they're actually, some of them are different lengths. The holes don't quite line up. And in some cases, there's actually different size holes. So, I don't know, maybe they were replaced at some point. They would have been a part that probably copped a bit of a hammering. But, yeah, it's just one of those things I'll never know the answer to, but I've always wondered about. I always find with this ironwork, you've just got to take your time, and it's about just finding the spots where the metal has actually been bent and moved out of shape, and just heating those and gently coaxing everything back into alignment. I don't think it's ever going to be perfect. You might question as to whether it was even perfect when it left the factory, but with a little bit of coercion, we can just keep working away, and very slowly we'll pull everything pretty much back into square. Well, we've tweaked and heated this and slowly, very slowly shifted this all back into shape. I am really happy with the first one. So I've got a nice flat section of concrete floor here, and that is sitting pretty much flush all the way through there at the ends. So that is a good job. It's nice and straight now, and I don't think we'll have any trouble at all getting that to fit back up properly underneath the truck. We'll just have to do the same magic now on the second one. So one of the other little tricks that I use on these running board support brackets is I'll actually clean up the original welds that are on there and I'll re-weld them. I don't cut them out or grind them out, I just simply clean it up so I've got a good surface to weld on, and I'll weld the inside and the outside. I just kind of think to myself, with the amount of heating and movement that we do you know, across these, getting them straight, we probably do weaken the original welds. So for the sake of a little bit of extra work now, chances are we'll make that whole assembly a lot stronger and we won't have to pull it back out again. Well, I don't feel like we've had a bad sort of a day today. We've yeah, got a lot done. I feel like we've got a lot done. I've got all this rust converted at the moment, so I'm going to let it hang overnight. I'm taking the risk. I've got it sitting outside. It is under cover, but we are supposed to get rain tomorrow, so could be a bit of a roll of the dice tomorrow. We'll just see how we go. Now, yes, I am aware that there are some earthing issues with LC3 headlights. A lot of people don't know about it because they simply don't drive their trucks at night. It is reasonably common, and I do have a workaround that I use for it, and it's simply adding an earth into the equation, but I'll run you through why it's a problem and yeah, just show you how we rectify that. And we might actually get Holly's lights working. I think that'd be a nice thing to do for the old girl. Rightio. Well, I've broken out the LC wiring diagram and I just want to answer your questions. Hello Rocky, he's just popped in for a chat. I just want to answer some of your questions with regards to these headlights and their circuits. You're going to help there, mate, are you? Hey, I see you snoodling around. Hey, go and sit on your bed. Go on your bed. Okay, well, we've got Rocky all sorted now. He's camped on his bed. Yeah, so the issue that I've had some emails about and some conversations about have been related to the fact that these headlights can be quite intermittent. They can be dull, and sometimes they just don't work at all. Sometimes you can literally give the headlight bowl a bit of a tap and the lights will come on, and people are getting a little bit confused and wondering what's going on. You may notice from this wiring diagram on both headlights, you've got a high beam and a low beam wire, but there's no actual earth wire in that circuit. So I've done just a quick diagram here just to help explain this little issue with the earths on LC3 in the lighting assemblies. So what this diagram represents is our actual headlight bulb here. We've got a high beam and a low beam, and then we've got our path back to earth and the battery. Now, this applies to any voltage or polarity that we might have on the truck. So it doesn't matter if it's negative earth, positive earth, doesn't matter if it's a 12-volt system or a 6-volt system, the same applies. Now, the situation that I've seen on multiple occasions with these trucks is caused simply by the fact that we do not have a good earth when we leave the bowl and try and get back to the chassis and the earth on the truck. So that is really caused by these mechanical earths that we have here. It's not actually directly wired to earth. We rely on good connectivity between this part of the bowl and then the bracket that it sits on. And then that bracket has to earth out properly through the radiator cowling, and then the cowling has to earth out properly to the chassis. So we've got quite a convoluted path there in order for us to get back to the earth on the battery. And that's represented basically here by this resistor, because the more, I suppose, the more hurdles that our current has to jump on its way back to the battery, the higher the resistance we build up on our earth return circuit. And what that essentially means is our lights could potentially be dim. If that resistance gets bad enough, we simply have our lights don't come on. It may represent an open circuit, so we can have 12 volts up here to the bulb, but because we haven't got an earth return circuit to the battery, our lights won't operate. So, you know, quite a easy issue to diagnose. If you put an earth on your battery and then take that wire and put it directly on the bowl and suddenly your lights are working, then this is the problem that you have. Now, I resolve this quite easily. This is like a standard H4 setup. This is a replacement bulb that we'll be putting, or a replacement headlight assembly that we'll be putting into our bowls. Even the factory standard LC headlight is a 3-wire system. The only difference is on the factory setup, that earth wire stays in the bowl. It doesn't actually leave with your high beam and low beam. So this is where it comes in, that we're relying on good connectivity in our earth path back to the battery. All I am simply doing is adding an extra wire into that headlight circuit and making sure that we take that earth out of the bowl and back to the chassis of the vehicle. If we do that, problem solved. So very, very simple to rectify. And look, I totally get where you guys are coming from that are purists. I mean, you want your cloth wiring harnesses, and you know, you have those harnesses made from scratch. So it's actually not a big issue if you're having that harness made, to simply have a couple of extra earth wires spun into that harness and yeah, connect those extra earth wires up to your modified headlight wiring. Doing that, you'll just simply eliminate this problem. It's a non-issue. For me, I actually want to use this truck, and being Tasmania, it does get pretty dark early in winter, so it's handy to have working lights on your vehicle. Also too, if we do any road trips, not a bad idea to put your lights on. So anyway, look, a really simple problem to solve, and yeah, that's exactly what we're going to do here. We've got our headlight bowl cracked open, and what you can see here straight away is the original wiring. It's totally original inside, except for the fact that someone's put spade terminals on the end of the wiring, and they've gone for a sealed beam. So, I mean, this sort of stuff, hey, we're talking about, 70 years since it rolled off the production line. So, of course, we're going to have some changes and modifications over those years. People did what they had to keep these trucks running. But what you can see here, this third wire that's in here is actually our earth return wire. So our power for our high beam and low beam coming in here, and then it's got to find its way through the filament of the lamp, back out and down back to earth and to the battery. So what we are going to do is we're actually going to we're still going to keep that third wire, but instead of staying here in the bowl, it's going to leave with the other two wires now and come out and make its way back onto the chassis of the truck. Definitely worth mentioning before we throw these old bowls in the electrolysis bath, I always remove the King of the Road badge. They are copper and nickel plated, pretty easy to remove. You've just got to go very gently bending those little tabs back in, but I'm always just a little bit worried if they go in the bath that it's going to strip that coating away. The old electrolysis can be a bit savage on materials that aren't like steel based. So yeah, just exercise a little bit of caution there. We've just dropped our bowls in the electrolysis tank. We'll let them soak for a couple of hours there now. We'll certainly start, you can see the reaction starting to happen there. Okay, well, we've got a few more pieces here of our crazy puzzle. So I've just turned the power off to our electrolysis. I'll disconnect everything and we'll pull our bowls out. You can just see how much muck there is on top there. It's just amazing what you can pull out. This will probably have pulled the paint off as well too. So we'll lift these out. Yeah, as you can see, look at that. It's actually even taken all the paint off, which is fantastic because we can get these etch primed and yeah, really give them a good clean up. It's ripped all that rust out from inside, which is brilliant. The old electrolysis, once again, has done a really magnificent job of cleaning these up and putting them back into some sort of useful state. One thing I have noticed here, which has been exposed by the electrolysis, is we've got a bit of a pinhole situation here, or probably a bit more than a pinhole. We'll braze that back together, and yeah, you'll never actually know that was there. But yeah, all in all, these bowls are in really good nick. You know, you get used to seeing a little bit of rust. I think the water pools in the bottom of these lights around where this bottom section is spot welded onto the bowl. And yeah, it's not uncommon at all to find them actually rusting out in that area. So yeah, no real surprises. I'll get that brazed up and we'll give these a dose of rust converter as well while we're at it. So all I've done there is I've just put a tiny slither of metal inside, and that gives me something to braze onto. So I braze that in place. We'll let that cool now, and we just need to maybe do just a couple of little touch-ups here, clean it off, and yeah, it'll be good to go. Well, we've ended up with a lovely solid patch on there now, so yeah, we know that's going to be good forever and a day. The inside we're not too worried about. We will clean that flux off because it is a little bit corrosive, so we'll get rid of that. But yeah, look, very happy with that. No more pinholes, and yeah, I think we're ready pretty soon to etch prime. What I've got here is the replacement headlight assembly that we'll actually put into the back into the bowls when they're done. Now, bit of an argument here. You could say that these are copies of Lucas headlights. I buy these out of India. They are for right-hand drive vehicles. I don't know if you can see that. Now, the argument rages because when the British left India, they were made there originally in the 1950s by by the Indian workforce. And yeah, the factory was just left there. Everything was still there. So they basically can still produce a lot of these parts brand new, you know, as per the original molds. So this is a Lucas 700 lamp, replacement lamp. It has been modified to take the H4 halogen globe. Now, it's probably not going to be everybody's cup of tea here, but when I do my harnesses, I do all my own wiring harnesses. So I tend to use in an exposed area, like out to the headlights, and where it comes back through different metalwork. I use this PET braided weave. It's the same stuff that they use on Formula One cars, comes in a variety of sizes, and it's expandable. So, you know, depending on whether you've got a small harness or a big harness, it's got like a minimum size and a maximum size, but really, really handy for automotive stuff. And you can put heat shrink over the end of it just to finish it off nicely if that's your thing. But we'll be using this on the headlights. It's very durable, very hard to cut, and it's perfect for this application. What I do is I make up my two harnesses to length for the headlights. I just simply put a bit of tape over the ends and then poke that through the through our braiding and out the other end. So once I've threaded that wiring through our weave, all we're doing then is feeding that up through into the inside of the bowl of the light. And I simply push it up through like so. Usually I've got probably, let's say 100 mil or so of wiring out the end there, just so we've got enough extra in the bowl. We'll fold that weave around the end there and put some heat shrink on that. The next piece of the puzzle, we've cut some short lengths of heat shrink and slid them up onto the headlight harness there, and we've just got to join the two harnesses together. So we've twisted, ironically in this particular wiring harness, red is actually the earth wire, but what we're doing is we're running back to black, which is the standard for Morris for its earth. I don't have a blue with a white trace. I don't have a blue with a red trace. I do have a blue with a white trace. So I've substituted the blue with red trace for a red with black trace, because there is no other red and black in that particular LC circuit, so it'll be easy enough to delineate. And yeah, it's just a matter now of soldering these together. So I've just popped our two King of the Road emblems, if you like, badges, into the ultrasonic bath, and of course that brings them up like new, better than your wife's jewellery. So we'll carefully put those back in now. Okay, well our two bowls are back together. We've got our little King of the Road badges back in on both. That was fairly easy. And what I always do with these is leave a little bit extra. So I've got some, where I had exposed wires, I've just got some 7mm split tube and fitted that over, a little bit of tape at each end just to hold that on. And you'll be able to coil that up in the back of the light. And what it means is if you do have a problem down the track, you've just got a little bit of extra wiring in the bowl there to play around with. We've done that on both. So we'll put these aside for a sec. And yeah, now we'll just start working on fitting our new lenses into our chrome rings. Rightio, well, I think the end result I'm pretty happy with. The only thing I've managed to lose is I only had one of these to start with, but the little screw and the little bracket piece that holds the top of the chrome ring in place, I've got a feeling that might have wound up in the electrolysis bath. So I'll have to go and do a bit of diving in there, and I need another one for this light as well too. I think I've got a spare there somewhere. I'll just have to go and fish it out. But yeah, look, all in all, I'm really happy with the result. We've got our braided PET conduit here, which is just about bulletproof, very hard to cut. So we'll be feeding that back through our lighting bracket. We've resolved our earthing issue to the light. We've just got to pick up an earth in the harness, but we're actually going to make a harness for this. I won't be buying a harness for Holly. I'll make one from scratch. So yeah, we'll just include an extra earth for those lights. And yeah, look, I'm super pleased with the result. Well, I think we're probably ready to tackle this dent. I've picked this one because it's the largest dent on the guard, and it's by no means an easy dent. Whatever has hit this guard, it's not just a nice dish. We've actually got like a fairly ragged crease running through here and down through here as well. You can see the outline of the dent is defined by this ridge here. Now, I was really fortunate. About a month ago, Uncle Rob came and stayed with us for a while. He's just the most amazing mechanic, engineer, body man, spray painter, you name it. There's nothing he really can't do. And we spent a bit of time beside the fire just chatting about to body repairs on these older vehicles. And, you know, certainly learnt quite a bit from him there. And one of the things that I've picked up there is the fact that intuitively we want to put our hammer on the inside here and start belting this dent out. Well, that's precisely not what we want to be doing. So we will have our dolly inside there, and we'll actually start working around the outside of this dent and slowly trying to push this dent back into the centre, and it will pop out itself. We may have to just put a little bit of work in behind here at some time, but yeah, the reality is we'll have a hammer on the top side and just slowly removing this crease and creeping everything back in towards the centre. Might be hard to pick up on the camera, but that's only after a couple of minutes work. And already that dent has completely changed shape. So what we're seeing is exactly what we described. This whole dent is shrinking in terms of it's actually getting smaller and smaller and coming closer to what might be a centre. Where this bad crease is, I think we might just have to get the hammer in behind there a little bit, simply just to push the bottom of this ridge up a fraction to a point where we can get the dolly right up against it and keep working that. But wow, what a difference already. That is a really amazing technique. It is the opposite of what I've always done, but it certainly works. Well, have you ever had one of those eureka moments where you just sort of come to the realization that something you've been doing for most of your life, you've been doing it the wrong way? Well, that's where I'm at now. Thanks, Uncle Rob. What you can see there is just the very basic outline of those two creases now. It is not smooth under the hand, but it is certainly to a point where you can actually, I could keep working that, I really could. I could just keep working away at that and taking every single little dimple and mark out of there. But, you know, I'm really happy with where that's at right now. Your hand is a great tool for actually detecting ridges and you know, troughs in any bodywork or paint work. Amazing the sensitivity that you have in your fingers for picking that sort of stuff up. The hardest bits to get out were actually these ridges, because they were a real crease in the material. Now I have to fess up and tell you that I actually switched hammers for that. So I've got this little dome shaped hammer here out of the Cheapy Charlie panel beating box. And I actually came in, I did put the dolly on the top here, right on that crease, and then came underneath and gently worked along that crease with that dome hammer. That seemed to get it out to a point where I could then go back to working topside and just working into the center of that crease. And the amazing part about this was that you could actually hear the sound of the metal changing in the way that it sounded when you hit it as that dent came out. Maybe it's just me, but I could definitely hear a change in the sound that the metal was making as I was tapping down on it. So yeah, super impressed with that result. And now I guess I've just got to work my way around the rest of the guards. I don't want to get too carried away here with the panel beating, but this is absolutely amazing to me. I mean, I've tried something new here and it is just working so well. We had a massive crease and dent up in the side of the guard. I'm still working on it at the moment. But the thing that's really amazing with this guard is as I sort of bend it and force it kicking and screaming somewhere back into an original shape, it's almost like this guard has a memory. And things are just starting to pop back into place. So, you know, I'll hit one particular spot and it'll change the shape over here, but it's actually the right shape. So you can see these creases and outlines here where I've been working, and that's just taking those creases out using exactly the same technique with the hammer and dolly. And the whole guard is just literally coming out and to me looking like it's going back where it used to be. As I say, never going to be perfect, but a real difference, a real difference. So at this point, I'm probably into it for about 2 hours of work, just slowly working my way backwards and forwards. I'll move around to the driver's side now, where the poor old girl's probably had the largest number of hits. Some fairly significant creases and damage there in the front of that guard. Obviously at some stage that original bumper must have come back and pushed that guard right back, I'd say. We've also got quite a substantial crease running through here, which we'll have to try and take out. And then if we come around the side here, we've got quite a long section here that's all been stoved in as well. I'll try and get in there a bit closer. Again, you know, not a nice even dent, quite dimpled and wrinkled, and you can see how it make out a sort of a crease there. But again, look, we'll just apply the same techniques as we did on the other guard and work our way through it. And like I say, it's not going to be perfect, but I definitely think it's going to be better than what we've got now. Just a really quick tip that Uncle Rob did give me was to make sure that you clean the face of your hammer and keep it clean. So before he starts any job, he'll actually get a little bit of sandpaper into the surface and just clean that off. And that's exactly what I'm going to do. That's just bits of paint and material that have just become embedded into that hammer with all the beating we've been doing. So we'll clean that up and yeah, get started again. Righto, nice clean shiny surface, good to go. Rightio, well that represents about an hour and a half's work to get it to that point. Now again, I'm learning as I go here, and I am just amazed at the different sounds this guard makes as it's actually changing and moving back into shape. When I got the worst of that dent lifted out where the crease is here, the guard actually made two distinct pops as that dent was coming out. and you could see it flex and move a little bit, but you could hear the sound change in the guard as you were beating it with the hammer. I'm reminded of a story that my grandfather told me. I think it was Green's sawmill in Mullaney. He was a blacksmith, but he was also a sawmiller, and he used to sharpen the saw blades there. But he used to talk about how he could tell when a blade was out of alignment or unbalanced simply by peening it with a hammer and listening to the different noises that it made as he spun that blade around. And yeah, I'm really starting to think to myself now that, yeah, if you just turn the old ears up a bit and listen as you go on this old steel, you know, it is telling a story as you're working it out. So again, on this side, we're underneath looking at the front of the garden, just what we're going to do. We've got this very thin piece of sheet metal, which has actually been concertinaed when that bumper has been pushed in. I think probably the most sensible way to approach this is to actually put some heat on that and get it nice and hot, and then try and pull it out. Because if we do too much there, if we try and do it cold, I think we're gonna snap it off. So as you can see, we've got a fair sort of a gap here. That's got to come out quite a ways. So yeah, anyway, look, we'll do our best, and that might also help us pull this crease out here as well too, which is also pretty nasty and significant. So all right, we'll get going with the oxy torch. Well, you can see just with that little bit of bending and straightening, we've closed that gap up quite significantly there. What I have just noticed, I won't put my finger on it, is we still have a little bit of a kink in here, which I think if we take that out, we'll pull that out just a little bit further as well too. So yeah, it's just a matter of working your way around. Geez, we've got some work to do here. But yeah, just a matter of working your way through it, I guess, and just doing a little area at a time, but also trying to look at the big picture as well, to see how it all lies. Well, as always, I'll be straight up with you guys and girls. I was having a lot of difficulty in this corner here and getting this section to come back out to roughly, you know, it's not where it should be exactly, but it's a lot closer. Now, what I ended up doing here was actually putting some heat on that section. There was quite a decent crease there, and it just wasn't budging. So I've used a little bit of heat in that corner, given this bottom section a little bit of a pull, and it's literally just gone pop. So it's changed the whole shape of the guard in this area, and I think looking at the other couple of good guards that I've got, that's probably about as close as I can get it to being what it should be. So we'll keep going with our repairs here now. We're just about at the welding stage. We'll get the wire brush out in a second, clean some of this up. We've got some holes to patch up here. That's where it mounts onto the guard brackets. We've also got some tears here as well too as we move around the guard. We've got some holes I'd like to fill in as well. Someone's put an old indicator here at some stage. Well, I'm pretty lucky here to have two very straight and original front guard support brackets. And what these are very useful for is telling me how far out the ones are that have come off wholly. So as expected, this is our driver's side bracket here. And as you could tell from the front of that guard, it's probably the bracket that took the hardest hit. So what we're going to do is we're going to compare apples for apples, and we'll use a little bit of heat on both these brackets. The passenger side is not too bad. It just requires just a little bit of straightening. But yeah, driver's side, a little bit more difficult. But we will use the oxy again just to square everything up as good as we can. And yeah, I think we'll get them pretty close. I've set our driver's side bracket up in the vise, and you might be able to see we've got a bit of a kink in this part here. So I've got the good bracket sitting behind it here, and I'm just going to apply some heat there. Now, a little trick that you can use that's pretty handy when you're doing this sort of stuff, you don't need to sledge it with a hammer. If you've got just a crescent spanner, once you've heated that up, you can actually put your crescent spanner on there, and it's a really useful tool for bending and shaping metal when you've only got small fixes to do like this. So anyway, we'll put it on time lapse. Let's see how good we can get this, eh? Well, that went pretty darn well. I'm satisfied that we've got that as close as we can. I'm going to let it cool down, of course, and just double check again. Well, while our other brackets cool down now, I think it's time we tackle the bumper bar support bracket, or brackets. Now, we've got all this garbage that's been welded on here. I shouldn't say garbage, it's been put on there to give it extra strength. The original bumpers on these trucks were only made out of, I think it was 2 or 2.5 mil press spring steel. Probably why not a lot of them survive. They sort of fold up pretty easily. But yeah, what we're going to have to do is try and cut all this old welding away and see if we can recover this, clean it up, and then very carefully get some heat in there. We've got quite a big kink in here, and we've got another repair over on this side. So we might have quite a bit of work ahead of us here to try and get this right again. But yeah, look, I think it'll be worth it. They're an interesting piece, these, because they've actually got this funny arc in them as well too. So unfortunately, it's not quite as straightforward as you first might think. So we've got to maintain this arc as well as getting them straightened. Well, there you have it, two slightly the worse for wear brackets. So yeah, I guess now the real fun begins. We'll give them a bit of a clean up with the grinder, get all this old snot off from here and here. I was probably lucky that it was a really bodgy welding job, so in truth it didn't take a lot to get it off. So. I've lined these up but with a slight offset in the vise, and what we can see here, of course, is the difference in height. So this is the good one, this is the one that has another kink in it just up here. So what I'm going to do is heat this up here with them both in the vise, and then bend this one down until it's roughly in the same position as this one, and hopefully, you know, hopefully we've got it pretty close to where we need it. So. Reasonably happy with that result. I think that's about as close as we can probably expect to get it, doing it the way that we are. A fair bit of heat required there, and I'm not sure if that spring steel will ever be spring steel again. We'll just let that cool down slowly now. I've gone around and cleaned up the metalwork where these bad cracks are at the bottom of the guards where they join onto the running boards. I'm just going to try, I'll have to pinch these together and just tap a few things in place as I go, and yeah, just try and weld these back together. Not sure how successful I'll be. I'll just do a little bit at a time and just keep moving my pliers and pinching it together. Yeah, hopefully we have a win here. As I said, I've got a few other holes and bits and pieces here I want to fill up. I've got these old indicator holes here I've cleaned up. Okay, so I can hear you asking, why is there now a massive hole in my guard? Well, simple answer is I started chasing pinholes. Didn't have my glasses on when I was cleaning this section up, and for some reason just up in this area here we had that Y-shaped crack in there, and yeah, a lot of pinholes. And as you know, if you've welded up on body panels before, once that metal gets to the point where it's so thin, it doesn't matter what size wire you use or how low your amps, you'll just keep blowing through it. So what I've done, I've cut that section out. The rest of it seems to be okay. I've had a good look on there. It looks as solid as you would expect. I've got some cold rolled steel here. I've just cut a piece out, and what I'm going to do for this little spot is make up just a quick patch panel. So a little bit of shaping and cutting later, and yeah, we've got a really good fit there for our patch. It's sitting in there nicely. So yeah, just a matter of zodding it in now, and we'll do the four corners first and then tap it around. Well, it's certainly not the greatest patch panel that I've ever done, but let's just say it's not coming apart. Well, you know, that's not too shabby for a bloke that's not a boilermaker or a fabricator or much of a welder. So yeah, I'm pretty happy with the results there. We'll give them a clean up with the sanding disc and make them look a bit prettier. That being said, we are pretty much just about around to our last welding job here on this guard, which will be fixing this monster crack through here. Hopefully we don't have the same pinhole issues that we did on the other side. The back side of this guard seems a bit more solid, so yeah, crossing fingers and toes. It should go back together pretty nicely, and then we should be on to the running boards. I think we'll be able to get them mounted back up. So yeah, all in all, I'm happy with the progress. You can probably hear the welder running in the background there. That's what that noise is. So yeah, it's just same again. We're just pinching together these surfaces, and yeah, just working our way down here with the grips and the welder, and just slowly pulling all this back together as we go. Same as before. Rightio, well, we've given her a weld up and a quick clean up with the sanding disc. You know, not going to win any beauty contest, but certainly not going to come apart, that's for sure. It's actually amazing how much strength that puts back into that section of the guard, just having that crack fixed. So yeah, I'm pretty happy with that. One thing I did want to say, and if we have got any good body men out there, I'm all ears from the welding side. When I've done panel repairs in the past, I've been lucky enough to have good steel, and if I have had to put patch panels in, you know, I probably haven't had to go to the same trouble that I've gone to here. You can just work your way around. Of course, you never weld in the same spot twice. You don't want that piece that you're welding to warp, so you keep moving to different areas on that patch panel that you're putting in, and slowly keep working your way around it. Bit of a slow process, but hey, you don't want it to warp. In the case of this material here, where I've got some bad cracks and there's no straight edges, it's all sort of crazy cracking, you know, as the material has fatigued and come apart. What I'm finding here is I'm actually going with the torch to either side of the crack, If I try and just weld right on top of the crack, then yeah, I seem to run into trouble. But if I'm actually putting a zot here and a zot there, and then joining the two, and then moving down to a different spot and doing the same, I seem to get a much better result. It just seems to pull that joint together. So yeah, look, if there's anyone out there that has any experience repairing fatigue cracks, then yeah, shoot us a comment or an email. I'd like to hear from you. All right, let's keep going. One little trick which I was shown by a boiler making friend, when you come to cut away excess material, if you've joined two pieces of material or put on your patch panel or whatever, you're probably going to end up with a little bit of a hump there, which you're going to have to smooth off. One trick that I was taught was, instead of trying to grind that out on the flat, if you've got a grinding wheel, turn it on its side and actually use the side of the wheel to run backwards and forwards and just take the greatest part of that hump away. If you're grinding flat, then chances are that grinding wheel is going to move around a bit on top of that weld, and you run the risk of actually cutting into your good material on either side of that weld. If you use it on its edge, then it just seems like you have a little bit more control, and you can remove like a bulk amount of material without actually cutting into the good material underneath. The other thing that I use, when I say that I sand back the welds, I'll use my grinding wheel first to take off, as I say, any bulk material, but then rather than use like a flappy sanding disc, which you'll pick up at any hardware, I tend to use just the flat sanding discs. You can buy the adapters for your grinder, and I just find that and I don't get a real heavy grit, I just get quite a light grit. At the end of the day, we don't want to actually be taking away any of the original material if we can help it. We only want to be sanding down on that weld and getting it back to flush to the surface that we had underneath. We'll just work our way around the truck now, and anywhere on these guards where we've got exposed metal, we'll just give it a quick touch up. I'm just using a bit of etch primer here. Isn't life just so much easier when things are square and plumb? I've just got these brackets for our running boards hanging over the truck now. Nothing's really bolted up, it's all just hanging there, just while I take my measurements and yeah, start pulling everything back into shape. What do we think, folks? I think that doesn't look too bad at all. I don't think we're going to offend anybody there. I'm just busy with the tape measure at the moment and just trying to get everything square. I've realized that my brackets that I've straightened underneath, they've still got, in one case, a little bit of a twist in there, and I'm just working through that at the moment. I've got the clamps on there. I will have to drill a couple of fresh holes in here as well too, because they don't quite line up. This mesh is obviously different to the factory mesh, and my holes don't quite line up like they should. That's okay, we've allowed for that. Well, I've just pulled our support brackets out of the electrolysis bath. I'll give them a bit of a clean up now. We've got a little bit of welding work still to do on one of the bumper support brackets, so we'll get that out of the way once we've cleaned them. And yeah, we might be able to get the front of those guards bolted up with any luck. And then that'll probably help us a bit too, just make sure we get the alignment right on the rear of both those guards before we bolt everything down with the running boards. Well, what are we thinking, guys? Give me some comments down below. I reckon that's come up pretty all right, and first time in a long time that this old girl has had some bumper brackets on her that are reasonably straight. I think we're probably still going to have a little bit of bending work to do there, just to get that finalised when we go to put our bumper on. But all in all, yeah, look, I think I'm pretty satisfied with the results for our foam truck. Everything's come up nice and tidy in there. I had no issues fitting all that back in. Again, you know, having everything straight like it was certainly made a big difference, and allowed everything just to flow as it went back together. There they are, folks, all bolted up. Quite a lot of measuring just to make sure I get that right, and got it right. But yeah, look, I'm super happy with it. These are so strong. I am going to have no hesitations about putting my big size 12 onto them and lifting myself into the cab. Yeah, just super strong. And the other thing too, with everything bolted up, you just can't believe how rigid these guards are. Like it's really made a difference to the whole feel on the front of the truck, to be honest. It's a whole lot stronger. I've just been entertaining myself. I've thrown this old bumper on the front here just to see what it looks like. Yeah, we're going to have a bit more adjusting to do on those brackets. It's sitting way too high. You might be able to see I'd have a few problems getting my crank handle in there if I needed to. But yeah, look, that's the general gist of it. That'll probably be the bumper that we put on the truck. It's an old one that did come from an LC3. It's not an original bumper. As was so often the case, the originals got destroyed pretty quickly and people would knock up their own bumpers. So yeah, it's just held on there with clamps at the moment. But yeah, I'll see if it grows on me. And yeah, our little bolt ideas down here, yeah, certainly worked out okay. This side's exactly the same. It is just super strong now. So yeah, really, really good result there. I could not be happier. Everything's bolted up to the guard. We're all bolted on underneath. Everything's tightened up. And yeah, all in all, she is definitely farm truck material. We'll have a load of wood on this in no time. Yeah, maybe a little while longer, but. Well, rightio folks, that's pretty much a wrap for this episode and a wrap for 2022. Man, it has been a big week. My foot is sore. I'm going inside for a shower and a bit of a feed, and definitely put the foot up for a bit, but I think it'll be a long night of editing. I've done nothing so far. Thursday today, due out tomorrow. So if it is a little bit late, I'm sorry guys. Came down to the wire on this one. So anyway, look, from my family to yours, very Merry Christmas, a Happy New Year, safe travels, happy restorations, and bye for now. Brad Dunn Vintage Truck Supplies, helping you get from a rundown wreck to a roadworthy restoration, 8 days a week.